we're going to be talking about the road to Caemlyn on this one, which is just such a fascinating time, I think, in the books. It's where Rand and Mat, coming out of Shadar Logoth, they got onto Bail Doman's boat, disembark in Whitebridge, and Thom hands his instruments and cloak, kind of like throws it at Rand and tells them to run and tells them to go to the Queen's blessing in Caemlyn.
Yeah.
This is like one of our favorite scenes. And when I say all of our favorite scenes, everyone listening to this, I'm sure you're like, yeah, like everyone knows this scene, right?
Yeah.
But then from that moment, it's such an interesting part of the books, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think we should even really discount that scene, right? Because Thom is such an amazing guide to the boys from Shadar Logoth up until they see the Fade, right? Like the entire time spent on the boat is he's making sure he's teaching them lessons.
Oh yeah, he's training them. Actually, he'd been training them since they left Emond's Field.
Yep.
Since they shook the initial chase from Emond's Field. So after Tarn Ferry, he was teaching them how to juggle, teaching them stories, right?
Yeah, how to play the flute.
He really got the concentrated time of just him and Mat and Rand on a boat with, they didn't have to do it in the saddle anymore. They didn't have to do it at the end of the day. It was full time. Unless they were sleeping, they were training.
Yep. Yeah. And another thing to note is when Bail Doman is like, hey, there's the whole hunt for the horn going on. You could go down there and make some money. It was clear that Thom was actually willing to take the boys down.
Or he was actually he was more than willing.
Yeah.
He was like, that's a way better idea, guys, especially where he's the whole reason he was there, right? That kind of seemed to be his moment to try and convince them to get out of there to safety.
Yeah, but one key aspect of that is Thom could have just left, right?
Right.
Thom was at that moment willing to take them under his wing, full time, right? Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let alone
that's like a dream apprenticeship,
right? And then he makes sure to split out the coin, and he's like, it's okay, don't worry, hopefully we don't get separated, but just in case, I'm making sure that we all have coin.
Yeah, he's super well thought out. He's obviously this isn't the first time he'd done something like this.
Yeah. Right. And then to top it off, he was willing to die fighting a Fade so they could get away.
Right, which is crazy.
Nuts. I love how he was like, don't look at him in his face. Don't look at him in his face, right? As he was running to the Fade. And I love how it kind of makes it ambiguous whether or not he's talking to the boys or himself.
Oh, he was definitely talking to himself.
Oh yeah. I think so too. But
no. He was absolutely, he was just talking himself through the whole insanity that he was doing.
Yeah. You can do this. You can do this. This is fine.
Yeah. Yeah. That was wild. But in that moment, when they're in the alleyway, they learn the core motivation. It's not clear at that time, but they learn about, his nephew. He tells them about his nephew in that moment. And as you're reading it for the first time, that doesn't mean anything to you. He's just, hey, you're like you remind me of my nephew. He would have been about your age if he would have lived, but the Reds, I don't think he said the Reds got him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think he kind of did say the Reds got him, but he didn't give the details of that. Like, he suspected that one of the boys could channel.
Oh, yeah. And I think Matt even makes a joke of like, well, what other kind of trouble could a boy be in with Aes Sedai, but not like us.
Right. not like us.
Obviously. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. And then from that point, they just run, right? They just run.
Yeah. And the reason they're able to get away is because when the Fade goes full, attack mode, and his just waves of fear.
Yeah, full shadow spawn.
Are, hitting the entire town in waves, and people are just running, like with their heads cut off, kind of just screaming and
full riot.
And the Myrddraal's own powers allow Matt and Rand to escape in that moment, because if it wasn't for that, like, there's no way they would have been able to escape. It would have been too simple. As great as he is, as great as Thom is, I'm sure the Myrddraal could have slip away and chase down a couple boys if he knew where they were.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure most normal people would see a Fade and be like, I am out.
Oh, yeah.
Like, full on.
Oh, yeah. You're just like walking to the grocery store, basically, and like suddenly there's a actual monster from the stories.
People are going to be trampled, likely.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, moving from there, right? They run away. They are laying real low for the first few days, right?
Yeah, they're not even like, they're avoiding anyone on the road.
Yeah, anyone and everything.
For the first few days. They hear horses coming, and they're diving into bushes as fast as they can and waiting until the other people are past before they're coming back out.
Yeah. And there are fantastic moments where they talk about shivering to sleep and rain soaking them to the bone. And
not stopping as long as they can keep walking. Like, every day they wake up and they walk until they can't anymore.
Yeah. When you do that, you'd be amazed at how far you can go.
Oh, yeah. Even for us, like, slow, like, Americans, where we can't really walk for anything because we're just not conditioned. Like, walking long distance really does take a muscle endurance and muscle toning. And even if you don't have a pack on, even so, we can still walk a pretty good amount of distance just walking on foot.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone who's an experienced walker has trained and has been, in their prime walking fitness, they can walk substantially farther, which, assuming they're going to be in a much better walking shape than we are, just given their technology levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like their physical fitness would just be significantly better than you or I, likely.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is interesting too, because it's like you and I have done a lot of backpacking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of backpacking for fun.
I also have done a lot of backpacking for fun.
Yeah, you've also done a lot of backpacking not for fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, forced marches.
yeah, like
It's really incredible how far you can go on a forced march. Like you can go a lot farther than when you're hiking if you're doing a forced march,
yeah.
which is really just called jogging with a pack on your back and someone not allowing you to stop when you feel like stopping.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, because doing mountainous terrain in the Uintas, high altitude, right? Like you start at 10,000 feet and you're going over multiple mountain passes. I think the best I've ever done was I did 37 miles in 2 days and I was beat to the core. But that's also hard conditions. So I'm sure they were able to make much farther than that in 3 days.
Yeah, I would suspect they'd be able to cover more than that in forced march conditions with like a reasonable pack and like other like full equipment. It's fairly common for units to be able to do a 20-mile hike in the span of a morning. So, and that's probably starting early morning. So, I mean, you could, under those kinds of conditions, you with a mountainous terrain, not like all uphill, right? But kind of like a ridge line, going up and down on a ridge line. Sometimes up a lot, but then you had to go down a lot. Yeah, you could cover 20 miles in this like 5 hours or so, which sounds about right, right? Like 4 miles an hour, and you just don't stop.
Yeah.
And you just keep going for hours.
Yep. And so the reason why I bring this up, right, is if your job is to find these boys and they were last in a position 20, 40, 60 miles from where you last saw them in 3 days, like that's ridiculous to try and find them.
Right, and you don't have any method to leapfrog in front of them.
No. You just have to send messages in front and let people know what they look like, and you really have to do a really wide net.
Yeah. So we can kind of skip forward a little bit on that up to the Four Kings.
Yeah.
So the Four Kings, the character, the first real dark friend that I think they've ever met.
Yeah.
Not counting Podonfane, because they didn't know Podonfane was a dark friend at that point.
Yeah.
Not until later did they realize he was a dark friend. So the first dark friend that they ever knew was a dark friend, Howal Gode.
Yeah, the innkeeper.
Not the innkeeper.
Sorry. Also the skinny innkeeper, but
well, he wasn't. I really don't think he was a dark friend. I just think he was a thief.
Just a bad person.
Just a bad guy.
Just a bad guy. I don't know.
Just a bad person.
You'd have a hard time convincing me of that, but it's neither here nor there.
Well, there's no documentation or evidence in any of the information that we have from RJ's notes.
I mean, you're right. All I'm saying is he was a skinny innkeeper.
Hey, not all dark friends are bad people.
Wait, not all bad people are dark friends?
Not all dark friends are bad people.
Yeah.
Also, yes, so the inverse is also true. Not all dark friends are bad people.
You're pulling my heartstrings with Thingtar right now. But anyways.
Yeah, well. And not all bad people are dark friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Howal Gode, he is the first dark friend that they ever meet and know that he's a dark friend.
Yeah.
So how he caught up, he had to catch up to them. He was in Whitebridge when they got into Whitebridge. The scene there and how they kind of fill that in is that the carriages that they saw in Whitebridge match the same carriages there in the Four Kings. Rand sneaks outside,
Yeah.
sees them, and is like, oh no, these are the same ones from Whitebridge. What are the chances that someone from Whitebridge comes to our, like, the inn where we're playing, like, which is like the worst inn in the whole area. And he was fancy. He had his own personal carriages, multiples.
Yeah.
Like, this dude's a dark friend.
Yeah, they made it very obvious. And this actually brings us to a great talking point of contention. Well, it was originally contention between us, is he, when talking to the boys, when they're locked in that room, he starts saying things about how he can feel the energy coming from them, or he can just feel it, right? He can...
Right, yeah, he was saying... he was giving him the dark friend sales pitch, and he was saying, I know what you are better than you do. I can feel it coming from you.
Yes, yeah, that's much better. And I interpreted that, and until very recently, I interpreted that as he's a dreadlord.
Yeah, and I had the same kind of idea where it just makes a lot of sense, right? Like, he can feel it coming from him. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, and from context, it just didn't make sense for it to be anything but he's a dreadlord, and he's actually feeling one of them channel, right? Or holding the power at the very least, right? It just didn't make sense to me until you brought up the key next piece of that.
Oh yeah, we were going back and forth on this for a while, because both of us were like, it's a strange thing for that character to say. Saying I can feel it coming off you in waves. Like, it's such a strange comment, right?
Yeah.
And it seems so obvious that it must be he can feel the power, because that's how all the other channelers feel each other out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can feel him channeling. Like, you can feel her channeling. It's everywhere in all the books.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We were both discussing that and going back and forth and throwing theories around.
And honestly, based off of the notes in the companion and your comment of he can feel the dagger, he can feel the evil of the dagger, I think that's the only thing that actually makes sense.
Yeah. Because once they get to Caemlyn and Moiraine is like given that bit of exposition about what's going on with Matt, she says something to the extent of, dark friends can feel this. A Myrddraal could feel this miles away.
Yeah.
And even like low-level dark friends would feel a pull at them from this dagger.
Yeah.
This infection from Shadar Logoth. They would, if nothing else, be drawn to it out of curiosity of, why do I feel this draw towards them? And Rand replies, there were dark friends.
Yeah.
And he kind of explains the all the different dark friends that they ran into. The girl that tried to kill Matt with her flame enchanted dagger, which is a really interesting artifact in and of itself, the flame dagger.
Especially when you think about how her character comes in later, which is fun. But
like, with that context, coming back to that scene with Howal Gode, suddenly it makes a lot more sense. He's
exactly
strongly drawn to the dagger, and he wouldn't necessarily have been actually searching for them. I mean, he probably was ordered to search for them, but he wouldn't necessarily need that in order for him to go to the Four Kings and feel a need to search out this feeling that he had.
Yeah. I think this brings us to the next fun step of, in that scene, that's the first time Rand kills anyone.
It kills a person.
Kills a person.
Human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he calls lightning down and blinds Matt.
Yeah. Thanks, Rand.
Yeah. So funny. But yeah, it's kind of, I mean, we have this weight and like we instill someone's first kill in a book or whatever of another human heavily in our society. Right?
Well, I would say in real life we do.
Yeah, in real life. But like culturally,
in fantasy
we do
books,
that.
it's whatever. Like fantasy books, it's
No.
like, he's yeah, you play Dungeons and Dragons, and they're like, oh no, my character killed a guy. Oh,
I mean, this is
know,
Dungeons and Dragons is very different than
a fantasy novel. R.A. Salvatore and Dritz to the good drow that only slaughters some people.
Yeah,
that people like being slaughtered.
Everyone's like backstory, right, has this key moment, right? But
True.
in this one, it's interesting because he doesn't even know it. He's just like, oh my gosh, lightning came down and killed my enemies.
Right. Yeah, he's not even like, he's just wrapped up in saving his own ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't, his only thought is to get away as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, and get his friend to safety too.
Yeah.
Which I think that moment probably reflects a lot of RJ's experiences in the Vietnam War of some crazy stuff just happened.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I got a buddy here and he needs help. And none of us know what's happening. We're just going to go towards the direction we know is safe.
Yeah.
And I'm going to help him get there. That's it.
Yeah. And it's fun because in that same, like within the next few chapters, the reverse happens, right? Rand then, because he started channeling, starts getting sick and ill and is experiencing all these things that Moiraine just told Nynaeve about.
Right. Yeah, we as readers get to know, like, oh, that's why he's feeling so sick. That's why he's shivering and suddenly getting better.
Yeah. I mean, but it's also so easy to justify it as, yeah, they've been traveling on the road a long time. They've been sleeping in haystacks under bushes and been soaked to the bone, everything else, right?
Yeah, especially the last night, right? Like, because they get out of that situation via Rand channeling, and then, but really for the first time as like a really substantial, strong set of channeling.
Yeah.
And then but it's like storming, like within like a few steps there, may as well have jumped in a lake. And it's freezing cold. So yeah, you're going to get sick in those conditions.
Yeah. Like you've been in common rooms, a dirty common room.
Dirty common room. You've barely eaten. You've barely slept.
Yeah.
You've walked all day. Like your body's going to be heavily stressed in that situation. You're going to get sick and you're going to get heavily sick.
Yeah.
So it's pretty like, normal.
Mm-hmm.
But we already had that tour guide of Moiraine describing the symptoms.
Yeah.
Just the astute reader will pick up on it. I did not pick up on it for a while.
Yeah. I'm ashamed to admit that I also did not pick up on it. That's fine. Maybe that's what makes the book so much better to read.
Yeah, multiple times over and over again.
Oh man. I mean, that whole section is just so dense, right? Because like the farmer interactions, you learn so much backstory.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a lot of exposition through farmers' tales of just like farmers yapping as they give them rides.
Yeah. And they even make fun of it, right? Like Rand falls asleep to him just yapping. And
Mm-hmm.
and Matt makes jokes about it, like, oh yeah, like you could sleep. Like all he did was talk my ear off.
Yeah.
And I won't lie. The first time I read that, it was probably way too late at night. And I was like, no, just one more chapter. And
Mm-hmm.
what are they talking about? What are they going on about? Like Tigraine, like leaving and running off and causing like a whole succession war, and her brother dying in the blight. Like, what is all this crazy stuff? Right?
Yeah. Like, you don't care about any of this.
Yeah. When you come to find out, it's like, oh yeah, that was.
It just feels like flavor text.
Yeah, it feels like
at the
flavor
time
text.
of like he's just filling in the world,
Mm-hmm.
which he was, but it's got a lot more significance than just painting mountains in the background.
Yeah, right. Come to find out later that it's literally talking about Rand's mother
And uncle?
Yeah,
Question
what?
mark? I think it's
Yeah,
his uncle.
yeah. I feel like it's his uncle.
Because they're siblings, whatever. That's family tree's messed up.
Yeah, dude. Anyways, yeah, that whole scene is fantastic. There's so much more that I'm sure we missed and we could talk about, but
Well, I mean, all the farmers that they run into.
oh yeah.
Elsa Grinwell.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good quick note. Dude, their experiences with dogs is fun.
Yeah. Stealing kitchen eggs?
Yeah,
What
kitchen
was I
eggs,
saying?
David.
Chicken. That's how you know I didn't grow up on a farm. I call them kitchen eggs, apparently.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story, and we could go on and on about how vicious dogs can be, and
Oh, dude, the
what it's.
Idaho farm dogs. Oh, they're the worst.
Dude, I was gonna say, like, when I was traveling South America, and I like almost got taken out by a couple packs of dogs in like the middle of the night. I was in Cusco, Peru.
Yeah,
I was in the wrong part of town because I was dumb, and had to.
and they knew you were drunk
Oh my god, I was so
as
drunk,
fuck. Sure, I'm sure.
dude.
And they're
Yeah,
like, "Oh, this dude's drunk. We can smell it on him.
Yeah.
He's gonna pass out, and we're gonna eat him."
dude,
Oh
fighting.
my god! I wonder how. That was dark.
Well, I mean, they literally tried. I almost got a couple of them with a brick. But anyways, yeah, like dogs are scary was my point.
Dude, in war zones, dogs are no joke. Like they were house pets, and they're just like they become monsters.
Dude, yeah, like in Peru, I watched them kill and eat other dogs. And I was like, is that normal to my taxi driver? And he just laughed and was like, yeah. It's weird.
Yeah, like yeah, dude. I've got some coworkers from other countries that are just like recently immigrate over to the US, and they're just in horror that people have dogs as pets because they're like, that is a monster that you have with your child. What are you doing?
Yeah, yeah. I think, especially back then, right, as like a farmer, people owned dogs because dogs are security systems, right? Like,
Oh, they're amazing security systems.
yeah.
By getting chased, like you're like sleeping in a haystack,
Oh my-
and then suddenly you're getting chased by like multiple dogs.
Sounds
Like,
terrifying.
What? Yeah, like the first time I read it, I don't think it. I was thinking about those Idaho farm dogs, and they suck. But you bringing up like the dogs in other countries
Mhm.
that are actual wild dogs,
Yeah.
like actually wild dogs, I prefer to think about the Idaho farm dogs because they're so much nicer.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I'm sure we could go on and on about topics like this. I think we've had a good conversation about that time.
Yeah, I think we can end it. We could keep going as always, but yeah, they get to Caemlyn, and maybe next time we can pick up in Caemlyn, or maybe the Ways, or maybe Shinar. Shinar, super cool.
Oh man, I love Shinar.